groups. Okay, we're recording. Good. I want to get a pulse check on how we're feeling. When I do this presentation in person, I like to hand out little stop sign or traffic light-esque cards for pulse checks. So red, negative, yellow, cautious, green, positive. So in the chat, can you throw in what color you feel like to the response, my experience engaging corporate volunteers is? And if you want to add a word with it, like frustrating or nervous, you can. I just want to see where we're coming. So we've got some yellows and in between green, yellow, yellow. Okay. Cautious. Green so far. Love that. Green, yellow, orange. So maybe a mixture of those two. I like that unique approach. Frustrated but hopeful. Okay, I appreciate that. Just as a little bit of a pulse check. Where I was for the majority of my career was somewhere right in between yellow and red. So I'll tap on and borrow that orange that we were talking about. Since we're all coming at this topic with a varying range of experiences, I want to start by defining a key term, and that's corporate social responsibility. So, at a really high level, CSR is the idea that a business or enterprise has a responsibility to the society that exists around it. And thus, it should trigger in our minds that it's something that can influence corporate volunteer relationships. According to Benevity, there are four types of CSR. We've got environmental, ethical, sometimes also referred to as human rights, philanthropic, and economic. In addition to these four categories, Benevity also states that there are other areas of focus for corporate social responsibility, and those include diversity and inclusion, governance, and employee engagement and well being. Within all of these areas of CSR lie opportunities for the engagement of corporate volunteers. So, whether you were feeling red or green or somewhere in between, these feelings are likely based on two things: personal experience and the result of a combination of influences shared by professionals in various departments across our sector, as well as those on the opposite side of the fence that work directly in CSR. As a high level overview, I want to take a few minutes to highlight some of what leaders in our sector and what focus research are saying about trends and realities when it comes to corporate volunteering. So, one of the trends would be social disruption as an igniter of change. There are lots of experts in the field of volunteer engagement that have shared their expertise on this topic. One of them is Jerome Tennille. I love to read his pieces, and if you haven't, I encourage you to do so because they're thought provoking and they're often on point. If you want to explore his work further, his chapter in, and this is a mouthful, Transforming Disruption to Impact, Rethinking Volunteer Engagement for a Rapidly Changing World, is just one spot where he covers some of this knowledge. The reality is that the world we're currently living in, working in, and existing in looks significantly different than it did 5 years ago. What might have been established norms or common practice relating to corporate volunteering, among other things, the reality is that it's no longer suitable. In his chapter, Evolution of Corporate Volunteer Engagement, Tennille identifies some of these disruptions that we've been facing to include the COVID-19 pandemic, the self-reckoning brought on by racial injustices, and then economic upheaval and uncertainty in terms of the economy across our country and how it relates to others. Corporations and nonprofits have had to adjust to these realities, and the likelihood is that all of you are probably still navigating some of these social shifts in real time. I'd be remiss probably to not acknowledge that we're currently in another period or an ongoing period that could also see and bring about significant changes to our sector, and that's the like political climate and influences. But I do think lessons within this session are going to remain applicable and maybe even become more relevant as we forge ahead in these current times. The second trend would be opportunities to partner or shifting norms. So that's the acknowledgement or realization that there are now two levels of organizational engagement potential emerging. So we're familiar, a lot of enterprises have CSR teams in their organizations, but they also have employee resource groups or ERGs. And ERGs are gaining equal importance, which has really led to the championing of different and important causes within one organization. So, according to Benevity Impact Lab's State of the Corporate Purpose Report for 2024, ERGs are climbing their corporate ladder and they are transcending their origins in DEI to take on broader roles within organizations. This influence will move beyond, or we'll see a continuation of moving beyond business outcomes and deliverables and directly into direct impacts on social responsibility. So, this deepening partnership between corporate social responsibility teams and ERGs has led to higher engagement in employee giving and volunteering. So, in the report of companies surveyed, 85% said that ERGs are directly influencing their volunteer efforts. 81% say that ERGs are influential in selecting nonprofit partners and making corporate funding decisions. And 56% of ERGs are actually hosting fundraisers or donation drives on their own. So that's a lot of important information, I think, for a leader or volunteer to absorb. And then last but not least, this idea of greater organizational needs, or that term volunteer scarcity that we're familiar with. So that's really talking about challenges with supply and demand. When we look at Volunteer Canada's recent launch of their case for support for a national volunteer strategy, it highlights some of the challenges faced by our sector and nonprofits within the Canadian landscape. We know that fewer people are volunteering from pre-pandemic times into now. There's a growing concern from nonprofits about being able to attract volunteers, concerns about volunteer burnout, and that demands are increasing. So these sector trends alone, I think, present us as four impact professionals an exciting opportunity to reimagine the possibilities in our ever-changing social landscape. We can be creative, we can expand our thinking, and we can go about offering new and different opportunities to match the realities in the world around us. And looking at different pools or types of volunteers, including those that come from corporate partners or groups, is a way to do that. So, now that I've set this landscape about some research and some leading trends that can influence corporate volunteering, let's get down to what it means to take a holistic partnership approach. The goal for today is to reframe a potential strategy for your organizations to engage corporate volunteers. We're going to do that and talk about it through applicable steps, unless it's from a case study that I've really lived and executed over the past 4 years. We'll examine how it can be a whole organization-wide effort and the positive outcomes that are possible. So this beautiful image is located in Stouffville, Ontario, and it's the main lodge of Trails Youth Initiatives. I work from home 99% of the time, but when I get to be on site, it really is a beautiful scenery and setting. Trails was established over 30 years ago, and its mission has remained the same: to challenge and equip vulnerable youth from at-risk areas of Toronto to become contributing members of the community. Trails does this through its 4 Seasons, 4 Years, 4 Life program, which provides experiential outdoor education that instills confidence and leadership skills, conflict resolution and nonviolent communication, physical and mental wellness, while providing high school credits, scholarships, and mentorship. It's really a 360 approach for the youth in our programs over a 10-year span. As Director of Alumni and Volunteer Engagement, I'm responsible for alumni programming in For Life and also our volunteer engagement practices. And that includes professionalizing, ensuring best practices, and bringing new ideas forward. The For Life program includes 4 program pillars, and that's relevant because we're going to talk about how the deepening of a relationship has really transcended all of those areas. Our Alumni Association, our AIM program, which stands for Alumni in Mentorship, the Trail Scholarship Program, and Forward Resources. It's really through Forward Resources that we established our holistic partnership with Tech Systems, and we're going to work through how that relationship was established. So just as a recap, so far we've set the stage to understand ERGs in the CSR landscape and some broader industry trends, and now we're going to dive in to look at real-life examples of evaluation, recruitment, opportunities, and volunteer engagement best practices, as well as relationship management as an influence to corporate relationships. So I gave you a little bit of background on trails, but I want to give you a high level context on tech systems as well, so you understand the nature of the relationship. They're a technology company that focuses on all aspects of business transformation. They solve complex technology, business, and talent challenges globally, and they partner with over 80% of Fortune 500 companies. They focus on change capitalization in four main areas: maximizing technology ROI, business growth, customer experience, and talent mobilization. The team that Trails works closely with specializes in recruiting and relationships. So now that we've established who's involved in this partnership, I want to unpack language because I think that's important. What do I mean when I say holistic partnership? We'll start with like basic Oxford Dictionary definitions. Holistic is characterized by the idea or belief that the parts of something are interconnected and can't be explained only by reference to the whole. So it's a term often used in medicine when you think about treating the whole of a person from head to toe versus just individual parts. And then a partnership is an association of two or more people and groups. Right from the beginning, the Trails and Tech Systems partnership felt like we were building to something bigger, but it really wasn't until after the first year that we started to see how it felt or was trending towards being holistic. It started in the lead up to National Volunteer Week in 2022 when we began to reflect on the year previously and took stock of all the ways that Trails and Tech had collaborated beyond the additional volunteer opportunity. So, to jump right into things, when we embark on starting any relationship, and especially one related to a new volunteer opportunity or partnership, I want to encourage everybody to start with the question, what is it that my organization needs? So we're rooting that question in what's our why, what's our purpose? Your organization should be asking, what are we trying to solve by exploring corporate volunteering? And subsequent questions can be, are we looking for specific professional skills? Are we looking for consistent episodic engagement? Those are what I want you to ask. I want you to also focus in on what I'm not asking. You don't hear me saying things like, what does the corporate group want? What new project needs to be created to meet their objectives? Can we find a project that keeps them happy? That's the type of language we want to avoid, full stop. Second, you should be asking, how does this relate to our mission? Is the work we're considering something that drives our mission forward? You always want to come back and center around the mission of your organization versus the smaller objectives of a potential partnership. Sometimes the former is often overlooked in favor of meeting certain targets. So let's just recap there because I'm going to go into a new idea next. Why purpose? What is it that your organization needs and centering on your mission? Next, I want to talk about what value is associated with the opportunity. And this is a two-part question: financial value and then cause and affinity value. When we're talking about financial value, to determine this, you're going to look at the experience with a full 360 scope and from all sides. It's not necessarily common practice in our sector to ask and talk about money when we're talking about volunteer roles. But I want you to ask yourself, what are the costs associated with our operations to make this experience happen? So when I ask that, I'm talking about materials or equipment, staff hours, physical space. What is it costing the organization? And then, and really hear this one, have we considered or prioritized the opportunity as being revenue generating? Can we parlay this into being something that makes money for our organization? Answering these questions will likely require collaboration across departments. So I want to encourage you to shift from like solo or siloed operations and think about expanding these conversations within your organization. Just because the word volunteer is in your title, this process isn't yours to tackle alone. So answer these questions over time if you need to, making sure that you have like a collaborative approach. So engage other departments, development, marketing, programming, whatever it is that whatever groups are relevant in your organization, invite them to the table. And on the flip side, if you hear these conversations happening without you, make sure you get into the conversation. So, financial value is one type of evaluation. And the next type is social cause or affinity value and how that relates to mission responsibility. It's really important to consider how your mission itself fits into your evaluation. Ask yourself, does my organization offer something unique and desirable in the eyes of prospective volunteers? Chances are the answer is yes, whether your organization services youth, the environment, animals, education, hunger, or any of the other worthy causes out there. As staff, it's our responsibility to ensure any partnership that we enter into is done so with groups who understand our mission and the activities are planned in a way that protects the safety and integrity of the communities in which we partner. So, time for another pulse check. In the context of corporate partnerships and volunteering, have you ever gone through an exercise similar to the evaluation that I just ran through? Give me a red, yellow, or green in the chat for me. Have you done that type of evaluation before? Got some yellows, good to see some greens, okay to see reds, reds. Okay. So part of what you're going to get as a package after this presentation is like an evaluation worksheet and template that you can customize and use to tackle evaluation for activities within your organization. So like a hands-on tool. If we were in person, we might do it right now, but I'm going to share it with you after. When we talk about evaluation now, I'm going to let you know what that looked like in terms of the holistic partnership relationship that Trails has with tech. So, in answering what it is that my organization needs or the why or purpose, what Trails needed was professional skills experience in the form of reliable and consistent expertise in career resources. So, what does that mean? Help with resumes, LinkedIn, interview skills, digital networking, and connections. And then I ask, does this drive my mission forward? The answer is yes, because obtaining employment and leveling the playing field in terms of network growth helps towards social contribution. This is where the meat and potatoes comes in terms of the value. So it costs an average of $6,000 a year to put a student through post-secondary education in the Trails Scholarship Program. We use this evaluation as the benchmark of minimum contribution to the For Life program. And here's a tip when it comes to financial evaluation, don't forget to factor in the staff time and expertise of your position and other colleagues who might be involved in the relationship management, because there's value in that too. So $6,000 is kind of what it takes to play in the For Life space. And I'll unpack what that means as we go. Social cause or affinity value and mission responsibility is the flip side. And we at Trails recruit our participants at the vulnerable age of 12, offering opportunities to those who face barriers to success, including single parent families, recent immigrant families, and families that are exposed to low income neighborhoods, lower education resources, and a lack of resources around physical and mental health. All the youth in the Trails program live within Toronto's neighborhood improvement areas, which are deemed to be the highest risk and the lowest income areas in Toronto. We recognized from an early on that the communities that we partner with are at the center of the work that we do at Trails. And as a result, extremely intentional efforts have been made to measure all inquiries against a specific set of values at various levels of engagement for the benefit and protection of our partner communities. So the values that I'm talking about at Trails are you don't engage with trails at any level unless you're there for the long term and you're consistent. So we have no transactional partnerships. That's what trails programming is modeled over, long-term consistent approaches, and those are the type of partners that we want. And then at trails, we also value having a big impact on a few versus a little impact on many. So we would rather engage a very dedicated team versus multiple corporate partners that aren't really connected to what we're doing. It's our mission responsibility behind the idea of trust in trails. Everything needs to be tested against the relationships that we've established with our families and our participants. So, if you don't work with vulnerable populations, you might be wondering, how do I scale this test threshold at my organization? But whether you work to protect natural resources, enrich cultural or historical experiences, or advocate for educational resources, if you focus on your organizational values and main objectives, you can probably do this value type assessment in your organization. So, to recap, in an evaluation, you want to be asking yourself what it is your organization needs, how it or what is the value associated with the opportunity, and how does it connect to our mission. There might be other questions relevant to your organizations that you want to make a part of your evaluation. You could be asking, do I have an existing partner to fill this opportunity by strengthening a relationship versus net new? Is this a unique one-off program or is it something replicable? My tech systems example is a leadership role for a specific program. But if I were to put on my old Crohn's and colitis hat on and I was thinking about Gutsy Walk, I might be looking for a corporate partner that could support a multi-site fundraising walk or run. And my approach might involve an evaluation that looks a little different for that opportunity. So I just want to highlight it's flexible and fluid. So volunteer recruitment is something we're all familiar with, and there are different ways to define this, but I like to borrow from Toby Johnson at Volunteer Pro for a really succinct definition. And that is she says that the goal of volunteer recruitment is to bring in committed individuals that will further your mission and advocate for your cause. This is in chapter 2 of her Essential Guide to Managing Volunteers at Your Nonprofit. And as alluded to when we spoke about evaluation, this should be no different than whether you're recruiting individual or corporate volunteers. There needs to be a connection to your mission. So to pull on Toby for another reminder, as with individual volunteers, effective volunteer recruitment is a process. Too many times I've seen requests come through where corporate groups are looking for an opportunity or to engage in a relationship, and it is then built for them. This is not something we would do for an individual who wants to volunteer, so it's not something we should do with a corporate group. Organizationally, just like with individual volunteers, you need to know what it is you're looking for to have corporate volunteers fill and have your planning in place. And that's really when you're ready for recruitment. So there are multiple ways you can approach recruitment. One is through direct avenues. So these are things we're familiar with, like postings for corporations. A lot of groups use Benevity, through promotion on your own website, through attending volunteer fairs. If we're talking about indirect recruitment, this can often start with exploratory conversations that really stem from the discovery of shared values between organizations or organizations that are rooted in like-mindedness. And the development of these types of relationships are often organic in nature and not necessarily intentional from the get-go. So I also want to reiterate that it's important, just like for individual volunteers, that any corporate volunteer opportunity is mutually beneficial, meaning both sides find value. As a starting point in the past, if you were looking for a corporate partner, you might scan a Google search and be like, what does this bank support? Or what does this insurance company support? And their CSR causes are usually on the website. I support youth literacy at Bank ABC, or McLean Insurance supports environmental protection. However, we highlighted that CSR has seen a shift. So while those might be the large national or organizational causes, if you're digging in and looking at the ERGs that exist within these corporate groups, you're likely to look and see other causes emerge as a priority. And that can be the start of a foundation or a new opportunity relationship. So I also want to highlight that indirect recruitment can really be a collaborative effort and is often a longer term process. So what did this look like for Trails and Tech Systems? So the connection originally started between our board chair and a family friend of his who at the time worked at Tech Systems. Casual conversations kicked off about the work of Trails and what was happening at Tech Systems in the growing movement of employee resource groups or ERGs. So it was a really casual conversation outside of any formal business goals that happened. We shared our values, like, so our board chair shared that at Trails it's really important for that long-term consistent approach and having a big impact. And the conversation from Tech Systems identified that they were looking for a substantial partnership to be ingrained in their culture long term. So long term, check, check. And they were also looking to not only make a donation, but contribute meaningful impact through volunteering. Music to my ears, and I'm certainly, if you had that opportunity presented to you, would likely be music to yours. So initial conversations happened prior to me actually joining Trails. And it was really in like January of 2021 when I started at Trails that these conversations started happening. More internal at first, and then we looped in and started what I like to refer to as discovery calls. And discovery calls are designed to be exploratory in nature. The initial goal should always be a balance between collecting information and sharing information. They don't need to be singular, and they often become a series of conversations. These calls can be done one-on-one or in small teams, depending on the nature of the relationship that you're working on. So at Trails, it started in March of 2021 with myself and our president. And on the tech side of things, the then director of business operations and their senior account executive, Danny, who it has been my point of contact for 5 years. He is also a membership of the Ally and Equity and Inclusion Allyship, sorry, Equity and Inclusion ERG. So that's like ding, ding, ding. While Tech Systems supports a lot of things, they're a global company. What was important to the Toronto ERG was partnering with an organization focused on equity, allyship, and inclusion. And their ERG was championing that. So we had subsequent series of discovery calls through March and into April of that year. And the keys to success behind these calls for me was being able to share long-term vision and values of Trails, was being able to express the needs of our organization, and it was also knowing what opportunities I had available, not creating something to meet their objectives, but prioritizing ours. And on the flip side, what I was listening for in these conversations was the desire for partnership and the ERG priorities to see if there was alignment, types of opportunities of interest and their other experiences to understand what they had capacity for, wanting to say like what have their past experiences been so I can measure and say like does this fall in line with what we have to offer, and then their availability. So I think that uh, discovery calls are a part of our work in a variety of ways. But I guess the question is, and red, yellow, or green me, would you say that as I've referenced them, discovery calls are a current practice within your work? And what do they look like and who is involved? Throw it out there in the chat quickly. Red, red, red. Okay. So let me flip and get you to think about it right now, just in the context of what can other types of discovery calls look like? That could be a new employee joins your organization and you have a one-to-one call with them. They're learning about your role, you're learning about them. I would call that a discovery call. Another one of my favorite types is with other organizations. Trails is a big believer in sharing resources and best practices and learning from other experts. So it's not uncommon for once or twice a month for me to have a discovery call with another organization to talk to them about, we do this way, or we're having this challenge, or somebody inquires on behalf of their organization, how does Trails handle this? And I do a discovery call. So that might make you change how you think about like your comfort level, and you're going to get a resource at the end of this session about how to template or tailor discovery calls to work for your needs. The next thing we're going to talk about is an opportunities menu, and how do you build one towards a holistic partnership. The process is really designed to put opportunities and prioritize what you've covered in your discovery calls onto paper, and then officially present the opportunities for corporate engagement. So this process was ongoing, and we started at the end of April to launch our opportunities menu for this specific example with Trails. But I also want to share a tip. When starting something, you might want to embrace the potential of a pilot program. This, by nature, is a chance for you to trial new opportunities or program something that has built in evaluation and a chance for change. So rather than making one fell swoop, you're really testing the waters, and it allows for finessing and fluidity as you go. This is what I did at Trails, but I also want to point out it's important to remember that I was tasked with building something new, but an opportunities menu can easily be converted to existing opportunities within your organization. And that can happen whether it's episodic opportunities or programmatic. So if we're talking about program or leadership level, and it's an existing role in an opportunities menu, you want an overview of the program and what current volunteer opportunities look like within it. If you're piloting something for a leadership or program role, you can provide in the menu options for how it can look, as long as you're keeping your priorities top of mind. That can be a collaborative process. On the flip side, if we're talking about episodic volunteering, you want to be including the who, what, where, why, when, and how much. When I say how much money the opportunity is valued at, and the specifics of then how to inquire and what the impact is on your mission. So I knew what we wanted to provide Trails alumni, but the For Life program was a clean slate at the time. So part of the, I think, success of our relationship with Tech Systems is the transparency that I led into the conversation with. I said we were going to try to test the waters, and we were going to probably maybe need to pivot as we go. But I think it was the strength of our broader value alignment and the acceptance of this being a process for long-term impact that helped to have Tech Systems buy into things. So this process went on from like April, and we launched our pilot program in September. So it's not something that's instant. When we're looking at opportunities for corporate groups, think about like, oh, it's the light version. I'm giving an example of leadership volunteers with the Tech Systems partnership, but for episodic volunteers, it is similar. Your evaluation needs to be done internally. You're still going to have probably discovery calls happen, but initially they're likely to have a more focused lens directed directly at the designated opportunity rather than like broad strokes discussions. I think it's important to note that during these calls, information identified might lead to more calls, but it shouldn't stall the initial inquiry. And an example at Trails are our impact days. I have a separate one-pager menu for impact days. What this means is that we want to make sure that an organization understands what's important to Trails and the impact that their work has. An impact day is when a group comes and delivers sweat equity at Trails. We have 143 acres that act as a home away from home for our youth when they come up for programming, and needs to feel safe, clean, and well maintained. It is $6,000 to have an impact day at Trails. This could be the lead or the follow-up. So if somebody sees us post on our social media about Scotiabank just being at trails for an impact day, and they reach out and say, can I come for that? I share my one pager, which clearly says, we'd love to have you. It accompanies a $6,000 donation if you want the opportunity. On the flip side, if we get a gift from a corporation that comes through because there's been a relationship there and say they give trails $10,000 donation, we then offer them the opportunity for an impact day as a way to steward the relationship. So we talk about value on our one pager, financial value. We talk about the values of trails, and we talk about needs clarity because impact days in the spring look different than impact days in the fall. So it's based in the same principle, it's just not as in depth. I'm going to do another pulse check. Red, yellow, or green me on if you have experience making a opportunities menu, or if you're willing to try one, because I'm going to share a template for what I did at Trails, and that can be customized at your organization afterwards. So what are the colors we're feeling about menus? Red on experience, but green for trying. Red, green. Love that. My second question is a green there because I think it will. Green on experience, good. Yellow, green, willing to try. Love that it's something that you're willing to take on and test the waters. You can build a potential menu around an existing volunteer role or a pie in the sky pilot that you'd like to try. So best practices is something we're familiar with, and I want to ensure that we talk about it in relation to corporate partnerships and holistic volunteer relationships. So I have, unfortunately, in the past experienced myself and heard stories of requests to circumvent, skip, shorten, or avoid established practices in the areas of screening for the sake of the volunteer experience or to keep a potential donor happy. I almost can't even read that because it makes me feel so uncomfortable. We know what's important for best practices within our organization. So whether we're looking at program volunteers or episodic volunteers, what waivers are appropriate, what screening is required, what's our training, and if we're talking about episodic, what supervision or oversight is needed. When we think about policies and legislative requirements, I think most of us are coming from Ontario. So what does that mean in terms of how we distill AODA and AODA requirements to the corporate group? If our organization utilizes volunteer drivers, what are the insurance requirements needed, and how are we liaising on that with our corporate group? Volunteer Toronto just launched an amazing resource today about police checks. So vulnerable sector checks. Are they required for the corporate group? Is it a bona fide requirement for the role given the opportunity that they're thinking about? Another thing to think about is how to take into account how we track and manage corporate volunteers in our organizational databases. What's done with the information collected? Do we have a blanket policy? Do we have a partnership agreement? Is there an opt-out? This is relevant because a measure of success for corporate volunteer partnerships can be retention over time, but also the conversion or engagement of individuals from the organization with the rest, individuals from the corporate group with the rest of your organization. So are people further enhancing their volunteer relationship outside of the corporate role that they play? Are they signing up for other opportunities? Do they interact with your communication? So respond to your impact reports or online on your socials. Are they participating as event attendees? Are they contributing as donors or sharing in your advocacy efforts? This is all a measure of like strengthening the relationship. Relationship management we've talked about, and I think there's lots of resources that are sometimes not utilized with corporate groups that are helpful touch points to enhance it. So like I said, impact reports, videos and stories, newsletters. The importance of scheduling regular touch points is also something I want to highlight. I regularly talk to the now committee at Tech Systems that manages our relationship. And when you share broader picture updates, new opportunities can arise. Last but not least, evaluation is really important to talk about because we want things to be mutually beneficial. So consistent feedback is really important. You want to make sure your feedback and your evaluation is done both cyclically and sporadically and at varying levels of participation. So we're really getting to the true experience versus the perceived experience and all the stakeholders involved. So the organizers versus the participants versus the volunteers, who's involved in the evaluation. It's really important to strengthen the relationship and how you might approach new ones when you lean on what is learned through evaluation. For Trails and Tech Systems, this has been ongoing conversations on both sides. We did a deep dive pilot review and we do ongoing larger for life program updates. So for the pilot, we did pre and post program surveys of participants and volunteers to learn what their feelings were going in, their experience coming out, did it meet our objectives. We also integrate in succession planning. So Tech has a lot, their team is regularly growing, and we do annual, sometimes semi annual, upon request, introductions to what Trails is to their staff so that if new volunteers are coming in, they have this familiarity. The strength of our initial partnership really helped maintain our ability to work with tech systems because our original contact, Alex, the director of business operations, moved on from tech. But because we had deep rooted connections, the new leadership came in and bought into the relationship right off the bat. Trails also works to ensure that Tech Systems is engaged in our other events. So whether that's our annual graduation, our big anniversary events, our Board of Governors luncheons, and we like to augment and have variety in our recognition and stewardship. So we do that internally and externally. We do it organizationally and individually and make sure that it's consistent and not just, well, it's National Volunteer Week. Let's throw out a thank you. Let's throw out appreciation. It's like in depth and integrated into the whole relationship. This is just a Trails Tech Systems timeline. I'm not going to go through it, but we started, like I said, in March of 2021. And if you fast forward to where we're at in 2025, Tech Systems was just at Trails for their Impact Day in September. We've launched our fall mentorship program at the start of September, and it will run to the end of December. That's been the pilot reimagined. And we're now integrating and planning for our alumni and mentorship night in January. So all of this has led to engagement beyond the initial formal role that has had impact for our organization. Tech Systems has helped with hiring support. They helped with a campaign for National Volunteer Week in 2021. They helped us do a LinkedIn content splits to grow our page. They've hosted LinkedIn sessions for alumni and board members. And as I said, they started with Forward Resources as the pillar, but they're now a part of the Trail Scholarship Program with a mentorship aspect, and they're also a part of our AIM program. So all of this stemmed from that initial touch point. I'm not going to read all of this, but when you ask about what makes success from tech system side of things, Danny said, the ability for our team to support Trails financially, but also with a professional skill set is what works best about this partnership. They have 180 employees across 2 Toronto offices, and many of their employees have come from similar backgrounds to the Trails students and alumni. And the partnership has become a core part of the identity of the Tech Systems Toronto team. One of the biggest things about the partnership is the long-term relationship and the ability for the team to get involved formally and informally throughout the year. The team has annual team building events that support this relationship, and it's become a great impact on morale and internal relationship building across the 2 Toronto offices. So that's not Trails benefit, that's Tech Systems benefit based on how succinct our relationship is. Overall, I've talked a lot about successes, but I also want to highlight that there has been some challenges in getting this off the ground. There's been turnover and role changes on the tech system side of things that we've had to navigate. Timeline alignment has been tricky. As a sales company with 4 quarters, trying to balance their peak times with our school year calendar that leads trails programming has been tricky. And replication and scalability is sometimes something to factor as well. Another tip that I think is really important is don't always think about program or physical opportunities as ways to engage corporate volunteers. During COVID, when we couldn't be together, Trails had a corporate volunteer group do a virtual team audit of our website. The company shared their expertise in digital marketing as a resource that Trails needed, very similar to sweat equity of our impact days. And we could benefit from that. It was a series of online sessions where our team hosted members of their team and walked through the website, and then they came back with recommendations and an audit. So one tactic to consider is looking at engagement opportunities beyond like our on-site or traditional ways of engaging corporate groups, so you can benefit from certain expertise. And I think it's still important to note that partnership stories can successfully be told on LinkedIn of how community impact still happens around these types of opportunities. Just wanted to share that example. So, what makes the Trails partnership with TEKsystems so valuable? It's that without a doubt, in my 14 years, it's been the most unique, informative, and collaborative, and without a doubt, impactful experience I've had. Up to now, I said my experiences had been very transactional or yellow red card feelings. I think the green card difference is that Trails and TEKsystems has a true partnership. It's balanced, hence my moving arm here. And I'm going to take it a step further and define it as holistic because of the interconnected nature of our relationships and how our organizations collaborate. It's multi-layered. While we do have distinct relationship managers on both sides, multiple departments within each organization strengthens the success of the relationship, and it's done so in a way that deepens impact on both sides. We have mutual awareness of each other's successes and challenges and progress, and there's a deep buy-in for what's been established. It's led to additional introductions and expanded corporate and individual involvement, as well as consistency in commitment and experience. From the get-go, no part of it was transactional, and it's a partnership that is year-round in operation. I know that not all of my future corporate experiences are going to match this, and I know that not all of yours will either. But what I hope is that by identifying some of the lessons of this case study, you're now able to think about different ways to approach corporate engagement because these are the lessons that are going to guide my work moving forward. I hope that you've been able to have takeaways that are going to enhance your ability to engage corporate groups in creative ways with this holistic lens because the outcome can be profound. So we've talked about a lot. ERGs, the CSR landscape, thought leaders within our work about corporate volunteering trends in general, and then the meat and potatoes of how to move towards a holistic relationship. The goal of this workshop was really to provide you with resources or an updated arsenal to slowly shift how corporate volunteering or establishing relationships might impact your organization. And I hope that that's been a result. So pulse check me now, 2 colors. Are you walking away today with new ideas or steps to take within your organization on how to explore corporate volunteer engagement, or am I energized about the possibilities that can accompany? Green. That's wonderful. If you're unsure about anything, I pretty much said that I love to have conversations. This is how to get in touch with me. I'd also welcome follow-up questions, or if you want to have a discovery call at any point, ping me, find me, and we can continue on. I know we only have 3 minutes left. If there are questions, I'm happy to field any right now. We got started a little bit late, so I thought we'd have a little bit more time, but lay one on me if there is
Hi,
one.
Patricia. Yeah, is there any questions? Maybe just put them in chat and
Yep.
we'll take them on a first come. Thanks so much, or the comments. So why don't I thank you? And then if a question
Sure.
comes up, we'll stop quick because let everybody get away. So, Erin, that was incredible. Like you just packed so much information into that session. I was just jotting down notes. So, I loved that you said it's not just mine because I have volunteer in my title to tackle corporate volunteerism. I loved that. I loved your templates opportunity, and I loved your menu, and I love what Danny had to say. And
Yeah.
Emily is asking if you could share a list of the books you mentioned.
Yes, absolutely. I'll always wait to share my slides till after in case there were specific questions. So I'm going to send my slides from today to Joanne and she'll send them with the resources. And in that package is a list of like the Benevity report and the books that I referenced. So that will come your way post.
Okay. So on behalf of all of us at Pavro, thank you so, so much, Erin. That was very extensive. And there's so many faces out there I see. Thanks to everybody who attended. People are leaving now. Erin, there any final words you want to leave us with?
Thank you, Pavro, for the opportunity. I hope it was beneficial and I look forward to future conversations. So appreciate so much.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing your lunch with us. Hi,
Take care.
Sadie. Hi, Christine. I see so many. Bye, Jessica. Kathleen, I'm not sure if she's left. I saw you. So many names.
All right. I am going to bow
Thanks.
because I have a 1 o'clock. I will get
Okay.
slides for
Thank you
today,
so much,
Joanne.
Erin.
Thanks,
Thank
Deb.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.